Your body has numerous cooling zones, and they are where your vascular system is closest to the surface of your skin. So that's right here, right here, right here. And so the cold water is absorbed through the hydrophobic layer. So I'm wearing one right now. And nobody looks at this and goes, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Have you fallen and you can't get up? It doesn't look like a device. It just looks like a pretty bracelet. And anything that's colder than you on a cooling zone in 1 minute will cool your blood temperature down and your skin temperature, decreasing the intensity of overheating. So it reduces that feeling of anxiety that happens with it as well.
Welcome to the Art of Kaizen for Entrepreneurs, growing 1% everyday podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Kaizen for Entrepreneurs podcast, where we discuss how to grow 1% every day in both business and itself. Today, we're going to be talking about some incredible new technology that is helping women alleviate hot flashes through fashionable jewelry. Sheilisa McNeiis is the creator of Fria Jewelry, a company transforming the lives of menopausal women through innovative wearable cooling technology. Excited to hear about the development of this new technology and how Sheilisa is developing her company. Thank you, Sheilisa, for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I really am excited to be here and for what this conversation is going to unfold.
Yeah, and it's, we always talk about as entrepreneurs, our goal is usually start off our company to solve a problem in the world and to help out people. And your product speaks directly to a consumer base that is dealing with a very serious problem. Can you talk to me, one, about where this idea came from and then the process that it took to create this new technology?
Well, the easy answer is I was hot and tired of being hot. But how it all began was that in 2016, I literally woke up one day with the idea of cooling jewels. I had no idea what that might turn into, but it came about as a result of entering this new stage of life and having these very uncomfortable experiences. Hot flashes are miserable and they come at the most inopportune times and they're just totally disrespectful. More importantly, I had to do the research myself to learn more about the life stage. And when I looked up some of the solutions, I would call them, they didn't seem to really fit the need I felt I had as a woman of a certain age, but also still active, still vibrant, still contributing in meaningful ways, academically and professionally. I looked at commercials that were for products that were supposed to alleviate the symptoms, and the images of in those products, like the people, they didn't represent me. And so I'm sure that's all of that conjuring your brain does when it's trying to create something new. And so cooling jewels was the idea. And I had to set out from that point to figure out what that's going to look like, what that's going to be. And I have to be honest, I had no idea. But I knew it was worth pursuing. So I just started out by just having conversations with as many people as I could have conversations with who understood everything from jewelry to engineering to technology to biology. Every aspect was new. So I'm like, I'm going to just keep talking to people until I figure this out. And that's how it began.
Also, and this is a new technology. Like you said, this is a concept that just fabricated in your brain and you just make it happen. Can you talk to a little bit about the engineering process? I think that's lackluster in a lot of the information we find online today, because really a lot of kids are starting e-commerce businesses based off products they're finding on Alibaba or Amazon or things of that nature, but they're not making anything new. Can you talk a little bit through the difficulties of creating something truly new?
Well, so first you have to embark on so one of my favorite books is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits is begin with the end in mind. I didn't know what I wanted to look like, but I knew what I wanted it to function as. And so since I knew what the function should be, I'm like, okay, so we need to be able to put something cold on your wrist or your cooling zone that is attractive and not bulky and not unfashionable. So I knew those things, even if I didn't have the complete idea of what the end result was going to look like. So I actually started out by talking to engineers, right? I'm like, but also what was helpful is that there was a product on the market, a cool cuff that was already done by a team out of MIT. And I was like, hey, that's similar to what I want to do. I don't want it to look like that, but they already have the concept. So I went to India and because that's where the inventor was, and had a conversation. I initially hoped that, we could work together and maybe I would be able to co-opt that technology. That did not work out, which is great, right? Because that's part of the learning process. Like, wow, this does what I want it to do. It's not in the modality that I want it to operate in. So now, but this lets me know this is a viable idea, right? Because somebody's already doing it. And then there was another company similar, doing similar things, also using technology, cooling and heating, thermal regulation, right? So I'm like, they validated me. Now I have to create what we are going to work on. Continue to keep talking to people, and ended up meeting the team out of the University of Illinois. They were doing heat thermal transfer research, started telling them what I want to do, and went through the process of what types of technology would do what I want to do, um, non-invasively, and would not necessarily be harmful, to the wearer. So we started working with evaporative cooling, which was already in the public domain, but is typically used industrially to cool like giant things like wind turbines and stuff like that. And I was like, this is going to work. And even though I didn't know how it was going to work, I was like, okay, now we have to go into the lab and figure out how we're going to make it work. So it was a complete iterative process of the process of elimination. Okay, what material should we use? What's going to be optimized? What's going to be the activator? And we decided to have something completely non-invasive. So ours is hydropower. It's water activated. And then it was like a couple of years of testing until we got to something that could be a viable MVP for testing.
How many
So
years?
that's the short version.
Yeah, I mean, you said a couple of years, the end of that, and then you had a lot prior to the actual testing. How many years from start to finish? How long did it take?
So it was 5 years of, like, research, like, because like I said, I started with 2 words, and I had never been a startup founder before, so I had no idea how to build a business from scratch. And if somebody had told me how, challenging it was gonna be, I might have changed my mind. But I knew that this was a endeavor that had huge potential, you know? I believe that the market that I wanted to service needed more options. They needed more non-medicinal or non-pharmaceutical options. There's nothing wrong whatsoever with the options that are in the pharmaceutical space, but there's so many women who would prefer not to use them. So I believe that things can be complementary. And I also knew we like cute stuff. Like, who doesn't like a cute accessory? And so if you can have an accessory that appeals to your fashion aesthetic and also has a secondary feature or a function that nobody knows about, it's completely discreet, then would people wear it? Would they like it? Would it work? And so it took 5 years to get to something that we said, okay, now let's test the market on the market. Let's see if people will use it, if it works, if they're aware it, if they'll like it. And I think that because my learning curve was starting from scratch, that's why it took as long as it did. But I'm really happy about that. You know why? Because it didn't need to be rushed. Sometimes we feel like we have to rush things to market, but this didn't need to be rushed. It needed to have the time to marinate, to iterate, to fail, to try again. It needed that. And I think that a lot of us in the startup world need to be more comfortable with that iterative process. And so I can't tell you that at the time I was patient. At the time, I was not patient. But over time, I realized how much knowledge was gained by going through that process.
What a beautiful story, and perseverance, the strength and the passion behind a product that you just knew was going to fit. Let's talk a little bit now to go to market, right? It took all these years developing the product. Obviously, a lot of spend, a lot of travel, a lot of conversations to get what you wanted. What did it look like when you went to market?
So we were one of the featured startups at CES, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that's the Consumer Electronics Show. It's a huge show in Vegas in January, and it features all of the newest like innovations that are coming from global startups around everywhere. in so many various disciplines, along with some of the larger brands that are also debuting their new products. We were there because we had prototypes, and we were seen by one of the Simon Properties, which is like they own malls around the country. They saw us there at CES and were very impressed with it. They were impressed with our demos. We were just doing like product demos just to let people know how it works, to see and get feedback, and to sort of grow our mailing list. And they were like, we would be really happy to, help you launch this. And I'm like, well, we're going to do like maybe a soft launch just to get some market validation. And that's what our launch looked like. So our go to market was I decided that Mother's Day was a good day to debut this pretty innovation, right? Because first of all, people buy their Mother's Day gifts at the last minute. They did.
It sounds like men are shopping. Yeah, it sounds like men are shopping.
Exactly. The kids are just as bad. I'm gonna tell you that. But so the weekend before and the weekend of Mother's Day, we did a pop-up shop at our local mall, which is Menlo Park, a beautiful mall. And we got to be like center stage, like right in the center of the mall, which is like a beautiful spot for all of the pass-through people. And we created this beautiful pop-up and introduced ourselves to the world like, hey, there's a gift that your mom or your wife wants and needs. And we were doing product demos, and we were really happy because over those weekends, a product that nobody knew, we sold like 40 bracelets. So
What year is this?
2021, right during the pandemic. And what it was very, so the challenge was huge, right? Because we out there in mask, and I'm gonna say, like, I had literally just had like spine surgery a couple months earlier, but I was out there. Like I was like, nope, I gotta do this. This is the time. And we were really pleased with the fact that people were interested in learning about what it does, and it was really pretty. So that was the draw. I mean, and then we're like, hey, I'm hot. Why don't you make me one? I'm like, well, we got to start with the market who really has a big pain point. Not to say you don't, but we know that they have hot flashes. Remember, like we have hot flashes. So whatever the case, it was a really good time for buzz. And then so we got picked up. Actually, we got some publicity unexpectedly from like some magazines that had heard about it. And so then we got some online orders too for during that same time. And that's how we started. And then the process was still like, we weren't advertising, we weren't marketing, because the goal was testing the market on the market just to get the feedback. But we got word of mouth. We literally would have people be like, they would buy one and then they would go tell somebody. And then the next day was like, "Oh, my wife was here yesterday," or my sister was here yesterday. And so word of mouth is what actually sold 60% of our initial inventory. And what we did was like, we just did a market pilot. We was like, we're just gonna the number one luxury crystal jewelry brand, they designed and manufactured our bracelets for us. So we, on a fee for service basis, we just bought a certain number, a small inventory, and we have since sold out. But over that time, doing pop-ups, doing in-person demonstrations, going to women's conferences, and word of mouth, we were able to gain a lot of data so that now, as we're working on the second gen of our product, we have a lot of information to go on. So that's how.
So that's where you're currently standing right now. Product is completely sold out, and you're in the process of developing V2 to launch to the public. Is that where you're at?
Exactly.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, that's awesome. Sells your initial inventory. My next question was, where do you go from here? Because I mean, it sounds like the launch went amazing, but what's the plan for the V2 product? How do you, now that you have the market has been tested, you know the product works, you sold out on everything that you have, you're going to iterate the product, and I'm assuming maybe customize it a little bit, make it a little nicer, improve some things that you found. But then once you have something that you can truly stand by and be proud of because it's already tested, it's been sold, how do you go to market then? What do you do next?
So then it's a much bigger push, right? Since we didn't have a marketing budget before. So what we also did in terms of improving efficacy, we were the recipients of a NSF, Small Business Innovations Research Grant, for our R&D for our phase 1. And we're currently, expecting our phase 2 to jump off any day now. That is part of the process, like how do we commercialize this, but how do we improve the efficacy scientifically so that it does what it does on a broader scale, has greater longevity. So that's part of the generation second gen go to market strategy, improving efficacy. Then it's really having a targeted push, like a targeted marketing push, which we didn't have before. But now that we've gained a little bit of market visibility, we've gotten some publicity. It's still growing organically and it's still growing word of mouth. But we believe that because we're going to be able to put a lot more emphasis behind marketing to our target audience and others that we think will also benefit from this technology, because overheating is not limited to hot flashes, right? Overheating is a global challenge. It occurs with people who work or live in hot climates. It's a huge issue with, athletes who are training in heat. So we feel like initially we thought, well, this is a biological problem and, it works because hot flashes are episodic, right? But actually what we learned through our customer discovery is like, they may be hot flashes or overheating can come from environmental, it can come from neurological, or it could just come from, just being in a hot environment. Your body still reacts the same. So now our second gen push really doubles down on the market that we're serving, but we're actually introducing a unisex product.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so now you really honed in on a menopausal women as your initial consumer base. That's what you built the product for. You know that's going to work, and now you're gonna, I'm assuming, optimize that product for the menopausal woman as well as release a secondary products for unisex.
So we just add in one more piece that actually is unisex that will be really ideal for active lifestyle. So men or women can wear it. It will still be attractive, still be discreet, still be hydropowered. But we think that that's going to be another way to gain more market data about the people we want to serve who are suffering from heat challenges overall.
When you say hydropowered, if I sweat, does it activate?
So no, but but that is exactly how evaporative cooling works. So imagine when I first learned about this technology and my engineers are like, well, it takes the dew point of sweat away from the body. And I was like, the dew point of sweat? But so, yeah, so it's actually pulls heat away from the body initially. And the simple part of explaining it is like your body has numerous cooling zones, and they are where your vascular system is closest to the surface of your skin. So that's right here, right here, right here. If you were a child and you had a fever and mom put like a cold towel here or you were overheating, same concept. It cools the skin and cools the blood as it passes by. So that is like, what was the point that I was trying to make? Sorry.
Oh wait, my question I'm selfishly asking because I play professional paintball, so fully suited and booted with a mask on, full gear, and I do it in states like I'd fly to Florida at the end of this week to play in feel like 115-degree weather, and I'm like, can I strap this thing to my wrist and feel great the whole time?
Oh, yeah. So it's hydropower, which means you just activate it with cold water, right? And so the cold water is absorbed through the hydrophobic layer. So I'm wearing one right now. And if I were to show you, it's pretty, right? So, and nobody looks at this and goes, oh my God, what's wrong with you? Have you fallen and you can't get up? It doesn't look like a device. It just looks like a pretty bracelet, right? So we're creating one that's not quite this adorned, one not quite this blinged out, but one that would be like again attractive to any demographic, men or women. And the cold water, it's absorbed inside the hydrophobic layer. There's an absorbent layer inside, and it keeps the metal cool. And anything that's colder than you on a cooling zone in 1 minute will cool your blood temperature down and your skin temperature, decreasing the intensity of overheating. So to answer your question, yes, inside that hot suit, you would feel better because you'd be like, I noticed that I was overheating, but now I've activated this and it doesn't take a lot of water. I just use like a straw full. I over wet it because I want my metal and the mesh to be cold. But yeah, once you put it here in 1 minute, your blood travels through your body 3 times in 1 minute. Every time it passes your cooling zone, it'll cool that blood down, decrease the intensity of overheating. You're back to comfort. So it doesn't make you cold. It just brings you back to comfort. So you're not overheating. So it reduces that feeling of anxiety that happens with it as well.
Man,
I was saying this. So part of our R&D is right now it lasts 30 minutes to 2 hours based on ambient air. So part of our efficacy is to like, how do we make it last even longer than that and stay cold to touch, because people think perceptive wise, oh no, it's no longer cold. It's always colder than you, but how can we make it stay colder at a specific temperature for a longer period of time?
I was gonna say, make me a test dummy. That sounds awesome. I went through 2 different heat strokes in the state of Florida just trying to train out there in the heat. And for professional athletes and competitors, for runners and things of that nature, which is I know it's a very different demographic than what you initially created it for, especially for like long distance runners in these states like Florida, Georgia, Texas, Southern California. The temperature is so outrageous that something like this that would just keep us from overheating or having a heat stroke, super, super powerful.
And that's what the goal is. I got to test it in Cuba last year. So, and the heat was on Hades, okay? And the humidity was like 99% without raining. I've never felt that before. I literally felt like I was melting. So the beautiful thing is, I was like, it's working. Like every time I wet it, it would give me that relief I needed, because there's no air moving and the air is really saturated with moisture. And so ambient air is a huge part of how evaporative cooling works. But I'm like, but I had to wet it more often. So typically I don't. Like I wear my bracelet to the beach now. I don't really flash that much anymore. So I wear it wherever it's hot outside. But I did notice that while I was there, I had to wet it a lot more often. But every time I did, I was like, "Ooh, child, thank you. Thank you so much." So now that I've had that experience, I'm like, in an environment like that, how can we make that work so that you don't have to wet it as often, but you still get the cooling effect?
Well, I mean, what a beautiful product. What a way to attack a problem that's happening in the world, and starting off at such a I wouldn't say such a powerful positioning, right? Starting off on the I need to help women that are dealing with the same problem that I'm dealing with, and then for that door to open and swing open for you for all these different opportunities for the same product, same concept, same ideology to expand into these other consumer avatars, so that you're able to not only help the original group that you're going after, but help even more people that be dealing with heat flashes or overheating in that type of scenario. I love that. I love everything about that. I've got just one last question for you. Yeah, I understand the product now, but I want to understand you as an entrepreneur, right? You were doing all this research, you're traveling around, you're talking to all these people, you're inventing the product, then you launch the product, and I'm assuming you're doing a million other things in between. How do you find your Kaizen? How do you find your ability to improve a little bit every single day? For the listeners out there that don't know the term, Kaizen is a Japanese business philosophy that means 1% improvement every single day in both business and itself. What do you do, Sheilisa, to make sure that you're constantly not only improving your business, but improving yourself every day as an entrepreneur?
Well, first, I start out every single day with some kind of message, and I'm going to call it of inspiration or spiritual connection that reminds me of who I am, right? Reminds me of the value and purpose we all have. Like everybody ever created was created with a purpose. And some of us step into it and some of us don't. Maybe we don't even know what that purpose is. But I know that this was given to me as a divine assignment. So I listen every single morning to something that keeps me on that path so that I don't get discouraged when things get really hard. And things are going to get hard, right? Because I think if everybody could be an entrepreneur, they would. That's the first thing that I do. The other thing is you have to do something every day towards your goal until you reach your goal. So if it's fundraising, which is a huge part of this process, or if it's making new connections, if it's doing more research, if it's speaking to additional doctors, if it's connecting with GYN doctors and then others, like I do something, even if it's a little bit, every single day to move the needle forward. That way I'm never stagnant. And the passion for knowing that this has the potential to benefit the masses, not just the group I initially targeted, because I'm like, we need something and we need something discreet. We need something that speaks to who we are without letting the world know we're having this normal biological challenge, but it has a negative connotation with it. And how was I able to decrease that? By creating a beautiful way to beat the heat. So that's really what I say when I tell people, like, what is Fria? It's a beautiful way to beat the heat. So that's one of the other things that I do. And then I didn't do it before, Kyle, but I learned to celebrate my little wins. When I learned to, because initially when I was working, I was just working, right? And it used to break my heart if something didn't go well. I'm glad that I graduated from that, right? I'm glad that I was able to see the value of all of these experiences and how they play into all of the evolution that we've made thus far. But I also realized that in this process, you're meant to ebb and you're meant to flow, and it's okay. You're going to have up days and you're going to have down days, and it's okay. But if you celebrate those little incremental wins, the big ones it would probably like send you to the stratosphere. But a little win is enough to keep my spirit going. It's enough to buoy me to be like, okay, you made this progress. That means you should keep going. And because I keep having small wins that keep me focused on the end goal, I can stick to this even when I'm like, it's probably easier to get a job.
I love that. And such powerful, powerful information. The little wins are huge. I recently read a psychological study that talks about when you don't celebrate those small wins or don't celebrate when you achieve a goal that you're going after, what it does to your psyche. And it is detrimental. It really puts it down. That, as well as taking small steps to your goal, really embodying Kaizen every single day, which I absolutely love. I love this. Sheilisa McNeiis from Fria Jewelry. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you so much for the technology. I'm excited for V2 to come out. If you have, like you said, when that unisex one comes out, I would love to try it underneath.
Listen, Kyle, I'm going to put you on, send me your email so that I can be like, okay, if you're willing to be one of our test subjects and give me real feedback, I am happy. I was just talking to our jeweler yesterday. We decided on a design for this unisex one, and I'm definitely going to want that feedback because that's how we make a better product every time.
Entrepreneurs and business owners, listen to that. Focused on understanding consumer influx, how to improve my product better for the people that want to purchase it. Sheilisa McNeiis, incredible job. Awesome entrepreneur, awesome product that you built. How, if people wanted to find and get connected with you, how can they find you?
Well, they can go to our website, which we would love. We would love because we're going to be doing a pre-order campaign soon. So they can just go to www.fria, Fria hyphen jewelry, jewelry.com. They can connect with us there. They can connect with us on IG, which is fria.jewelry. But if they just put in Fria Jewelry, they will find our little hot and cold icon up there. We're on Facebook. Fria, keep you cool.
Love it.
So we would love to connect any way you want.
And all the information is going to find below in the show notes. Sheilisa McNeiis, thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope you have a great one. If you guys have finished this podcast, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And please don't worry about my little one crying in the background.